Welcome to the Cake Therapy Podcast, a slice of joy and healing with your host, Dr. Altricia Foster. This is a heartwarming and uplifting space that celebrates the transformative power of baking therapy. The conversations will be a delightful blend of inspirational stories, expert insights, and practical baking tips. Each episode will take listeners on a journey of self-discovery, emotional healing, and connection through the therapeutic art of baking. There's something here for everyone, so lock in and let's get into it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Cake Therapy Podcast, your slice of joy and healing with me, your host, Altricia Foster. So today we have a very exciting guest. Yes, she is exciting. She is from my neighborhood and she's a cookier. So we want to welcome Maddie Gartmann from Garty Goodies. She makes the best cookies in Minnesota. She's one of the best cookiers I've seen in a long time, and I'm excited to have her join us today. So welcome, Maddie.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So if you haven't followed Maddie yet, Garty Goodies makes like these intensive cookies, okay? She's intense. Her cookies look good. They're so detailed. They're packed with goodness, and I can tell that you bake your cookies from a real place of excitement and joy. And I look forward to seeing your posts, and I like how you flip your cookie cutters. What do you call that series,
Yeah.
Maddie?
Oh, I call it Mystery Cookie Monday,
Mystery
but
cookie.
cookie
Yeah.
flips. Yep, that's another
Cookie flips.
term for it. Yeah.
And I love that. And I want to know from you how you're doing. Like how, I know that you have like all of these followers. What's the pressure like to just keep maintaining and flipping cookies, every Monday?
Yeah, that's a great question. How am I doing? Well, busy all the time. But yeah, it is. It's definitely a lot of pressure, especially because I'm maintaining a social media job. Essentially, it's become my job, as well as an actual baking job where I sell cookies to people, as well as being a stay-at-home mom. So it's juggling three different things. And it's easy for one of those to get put on the back burner. What I try to do so that the social media component doesn't take over, because it really can, because the internet can just, being on your phone can just get into your everyday life. If you don't have some control over it, is to batch create. And so I'll take Sunday and I'll make all 5 videos for the whole week on Sunday. Yeah. And that really helps. And then I can just, some of them, like Instagram has scheduling tools, so I can just schedule them all out right away, get them in my drafts. And that really, really helps keep things from being overly taking over my life, because I still do have to sell cookies to people, and they're not people that come from TikTok and Instagram. They're people in my neighborhood. Yeah. And I still need to be a mom full time, so I'm sure a lot of women can relate to that, juggling a career and motherhood.
Yeah. So outside of your almost 1 million TikTok followers who get to interact with you on some level, via that platform, tell us who you are. Like, who are you? What influenced your childhood? Like, what makes Maddie?
Well, I can't say that I have had a lifelong love of baking. But I've had a lifelong love of the arts and creating. So there's always some sort of a creating medium, whether it was scrapbooking, crocheting, sewing, I did it all, everything that you could do. And then as I got older, I wanted to get into cupcakes, which is like a slippery slope. You start with cupcakes and then you're suddenly taking that Wilton cake decorating class at Michael's. And then I was just determined to figure out how to make those cookies. And this was before anyone really offered classes. And it was just going to be another one of my creative outlets, because that's something that I have learned in my life to maintain my mental health, is that I need a creative outlet. And whether it's baking, whether it's painting, I have to do something creative. It's almost, I compare to working out. I need to work out too, but for me, that is it is my mental health thing that I need to do to maintain, just, keeping my bucket full every day.
Yeah. When you do that, tell me, like, you said that it's your creative outlet and you'll have to keep your own, your bucket full. Expand on the mental health aspect of it. Like, what does it do for Maddie when Maddie
Mhm.
creates? How does Maddie feel? What does Maddie get from creating?
When I am fully into it, I can get completely lost in it. Either I put music on or headphones on, and I can escape everything else. When I'm creating for content purposes and I can't get lost in it, that's when I find it's not fun for me anymore. And so I have to maintain that, okay, I'll do a couple things for content purposes, but I have to do things that I just enjoy doing at the end of the day. Like, I have to make sure I am integrating things that just bring me joy. Because otherwise it's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So, besides you said that the content creation does not bring you as much joy as other things. Describe the joy that you're actually seeking when, the
Well, I
one
mean,
that
it
you're
definitely can bring me joy. It's when I'm forcing it, when I'm like, oh, I feel like I have to post and I have to keep the people happy. That's when it doesn't bring joy. And so the joy that I'm seeking is just getting completely lost in mixing the icing colors, coming up with like a beautiful palette that like really speaks to my style. Or even if I'm taking an order and I just love the theme that the person has given me, just being able to completely get lost in it, be able to use my own creativity, not trying to copy, because it can be so easy to just go on and see what someone else has done. And that can be fun, and that can be a learning experience in itself. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not trying to take credit for anything. But when I get to put my own creative flair on it, it's when I just feel the most fulfilled.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm the most proud. And yeah.
So what is your style? You did mention, like, if you're creating and you get to make a cookie that's in your style, how would you define your cookie style?
Colorful. I love color. Neutral color palettes are always hard for me because I just love color. I love colorful, whimsical. I love more simple. You said that mine are very intricate, which is so funny because I think of my style as more simple. But I could see, like, from the outside perspective how it would seem very intricate. And I have always leaned towards vintage and retro elements. I like to incorporate those where I can, where it makes sense. So that always kind of it sparks my creativity.
Yeah. So do you you like color, vintage? Is your style overall a vintage style in terms of like home and dress? And how about
yes.
color? Yeah.
Yes,
Is it translating into your daily life?
Yeah. That's me. I mean, my husband and I watch Antiques Roadshow for fun on a Friday night. So I love thrifting, and I love looking at old retro advertisements, and I've always been that way. I get a lot of influence. My mom has always been like that, and she's really the one who kind of passed the creativity bug down to me, because we were always doing crafts together, and she's always been, she's an amazingly talented sewer, and now she owns a photography business. And so I think I get a lot of that vintage antique thing from her.
Yeah, yeah. My mom sews as well, so I think I did get that creative gene from her. My grandmother, in fact, does a lot of craft working as well, so I know it's coming down from the matriarchal, the maternal line for me as well. So that's pretty exciting. So as we were looking at your on your website, and I've gotten to know you, like, via social media. I know that you were a teacher.
Yes.
Tell me about, like, how did you get into teaching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was always a writer. I always really loved to read and write. And it kind of made sense to become an English teacher because I knew I could continue to share that, or to be involved in reading and writing, and then get to share it with other people. So right out of college, I went and got my teaching degree and got a job right away teaching middle school. which was crazy and fun. And then taught high school English for about 7 years before I left my job when I got pregnant with my son. Well, after I had my son, and we needed to find a way to make it work for me to stay at home. And so then that's where the cookie business really evolved too.
Yeah. So tell me, like, during the time or the periods when you were actually teaching, tell me, how did you maintain the creative artistic side for you? Maybe is that yeah, tell me.
Oh
How did you
yeah,
maintain that? Yeah.
not very well. Teaching is so all consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I was also coaching dance at the time, so I guess you could say that was somewhat of the creative side. So any of my creative outlets had to come from things I did in my classroom. And I think I really missed being creative during that time in my life. But there's so much prepping and planning and grading papers and reading chapters that it's really all consuming. And that was a big part of why we decided to make it work for me to stay at home, was because I knew my mental health wouldn't be balanced to be teaching and have a kid and then, you know, attempt any sort of other outlet in my life. That was part of it too. But yeah.
Yeah. So my journey also began after the birth, of my second child. I just couldn't maintain or manage my own personal mental health at the time. And it made sense to kind of step back and figure out what was happening to me. So I've realized that in these conversations, a lot of these baker or baking stories always begin around life events per se, right?
Interesting.
So yeah. So kudos to you for making that decision to know that the balance was needed and you could not possibly maintain, taking care of your son and, working in the classroom. So tell me, once you decided to stay home, you know, how did you get your cookie, how did your cookie journey begin? How did you
Yes.
get there?
So we were planning on having my son be in daycare, and then my daycare provider decided to move out of state. And so we kind of had to scramble because it's so hard to find an infant spot at a good place. And I just, my mental health, postpartum hormones, postpartum, I don't want to say depression, but, just it hit me really, really hard. And my husband, his love language is taking action and fixing problems. And he saw how sad I was at the thought of putting my kid in a daycare that I wasn't fully happy with. And he said, give me some time. I'm going to see if we can make it work for you to stay at home. Because, a teaching salary and his salary, it wasn't like we were rolling in the riches. We had to find a way to make it work. And he stayed up one night and he crunched all the numbers and he was like, you know what, I think if we sell our house, we can make a really good profit. Because we had, in our early married years, we had flipped a house that was a foreclosure. So he's like, we can make a great profit. We can move into a smaller house that's on the bus line, and I'll sell my car and take the bus into work, because he worked at downtown St. Paul at the time. And that's what we did. And it was really scary. And he was like, I can make almost all the bills work, but if you can just pay your car payment, if you can figure out a way, because at the time I really didn't think that cookies could be a lucrative, and it's hard to make it lucrative. I didn't think they were a viable option as an actual career. I kind of just thought it was a hobby. And, but I thought, okay, I can sell enough to make a car payment, that's easy. And I need that outlet from my baby. As much as I love being a mom, I need that space away from them. So it was kind of a welcome challenge. And we moved in on November 1st of 2018. And a week later, I posted my first cookie sale in the neighborhood Facebook page for elf cookies. And it was terrifying. Because you know how those neighborhood Facebook pages can be, I was terrified, but it ended up being amazing. I got my first sales and everything just rolled into action from there. And I was realizing, okay, this could actually work,
Yeah. So when did you actually start baking? Did you bake your first set of cookies? Were the elf cookies?
No, I had been baking, just as an outlet when I was teaching. And I had a lot of teacher friends with young kids, so they started ordering before I was officially a business. I think that's how a lot of people stumble into it. They're doing it for fun, and someone says, "Oh, I want, a cake for my son's birthday." And so I kind of got a little practice with the business world, and it wasn't until I needed to make the money that I started taking it seriously as a business and started kind of putting my CEO hat on of, okay, this is more than just a creative outlet. So I need to treat it differently now.
Yeah. So when you transition from just hobbyer to an entrepreneur, tell me about that transition. Was it hard for you? Did you lose your passion? Tell me how that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely learning about boundaries in a whole new way. I think we all take on too many orders in our first couple of months, or we take on orders that are red flags of maybe orders you shouldn't have taken because the customer doesn't quite understand how it works or whatever it is. And so much of that was a learning curve. And was really hard. And for a lot of people, I think it's enough for them to decide, okay, this isn't for me. I don't like this.
Yeah.
You have to toughen your skin and set aside your hobby part and your business part and learn how to create boundaries and rules that you're going to stick by for your business, or else you're going to burn out so quick. I mean, some of those things are like, around the holidays, not taking any custom orders, not making exceptions for that, not giving, discounts to family members, distant family members, or whatever it is. Just like little things like that can add up and start to burn you out if you don't put your foot down. Not taking orders that aren't in your style, or, when people dictate, I want this exact cookie, and you're becoming a robot. It's just all about those boundaries of what you can make work.
Yeah. Did you find I found in my experience, once I started charging for my cakes and started setting those boundaries, my relationships with people changed. How did you find that? Did that happen to you? And how did you navigate that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I wouldn't say relationships changed, because I'd say most of my friends were pretty understanding when I had to do a price range, but they weren't ordering from me anymore,
Okay.
And that was fine. And they would always be like, oh, how much do you charge? And I tell them, they'd be like, oh, good for you. Good for, like always very encouraging, but also like, okay, I'm not going to be, buying from you anymore. And that's perfectly fine, because that's probably not my ideal customer. At the end of the day. And it's always scary, especially as we've had to raise our prices with the economy, and raise my prices just with my skill level too.
Yeah.
That's been hard, just maintaining that customer base of people that are like, yep, you are worth that much, and I'm going to continue to purchase from you at that price level. But yeah, it's definitely changed my customer base. That's for sure.
That's good. So, when I look at your Instagram page, I see passion. I see an artist. You really are a true artist, and I can see why you're doing this. And you once said that sugar cookies are your love language and your passion. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, expand on that for our listeners.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear you say that, honestly, because I get that imposter syndrome all the time of like, oh, am I just, copying what everyone else is doing? I so want to be seen as an artist and want to feel that way. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Oh, you're welcome. You absolutely are an artist, truly.
Well, thank you. I would say I love at the end of the day when I don't have to make money, and when I can just share that's why I love teaching cookie classes so much. Because I love seeing how excited people get when they get to create these tiny little pieces of artwork, and just sharing that passion with people. That to me it fills my bucket. And I love gifting people my cookies, and everyone always says, oh, these are too pretty to eat. Like that's the classic response, but I just love the way that cookies they touch every single, and cakes too, they touch every single demographic. I mean, who doesn't get happy when they see a beautiful piece of dessert?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just so fun to get to be the one that creates that.
Yeah. And I'm happy that you did say cakes too, because I was curious, as to why did Maddie choose cookies to be her main focus? Why cookies and not cakes?
Yeah, because it started out as cakes. I started with making cakes. And I think because at the end of the day, my passion is more the art and not the baking. And cakes are, you have different flavors and different combinations and fillings, and I could never figure out a lemon curd to save my life. And and then I'd look, and my kitchen was just like exploded with sugar and frosting. And I think it was stressful because what can go wrong with a cake is a lot harder to fix sometimes than with cookies. Yeah. I mean, you're probably good now because you have such amazing, beautiful cakes. You probably know how to fix everything. But when you're just starting out, and like, I just remember I made this Trolls cake, like the movie Trolls, and I took white chocolate melts to make her hair, and it was like a 90-degree day. And by the time I gave them the cake, it was just complete. Poppy was like just like a melted mess. And luckily it was for a good friend and she did not care, but I was just like devastated over it. And I think with cookies, it's sugar cookie, royal icing. It never changes. It's just a matter of what colors I mix up and what design I create. So especially because I had a baby too. So I had my son, and my business was, in its early days, he was about 5-6 months old. And he might wake up from his nap. And if I'm in the middle of a cake, how do you just walk away from that and hold a baby or feed a baby? I mean, I'm sure many women have accomplished it and they're amazing, but I couldn't do it. And so it was nice because cookies, it was like, okay, he's up. I step away and I'll come back to these later,
Yeah, but you still have that love for cake. It's just that it's easy to manage. Yeah.
I still love making my kids' birthday cakes, and whenever I get the chance, and it's more fun that way because there's no pressure. And that's, you're talking about like finding that passion of what makes you happy. I'm kind of glad I don't sell cakes anymore, because then it makes it so much more special when I make my kids' cake, because I'm truly just enjoying making this little piece of artwork for their birthdays.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for me, like, I don't know how to fix everything. So like, you just drop right there.
Right. You trial and error, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I see my cake going out and I'm like, oh my God, I did not fix that at all. But for me, it's like right now I'm choosing to bake with a purpose, because I found myself like losing my passion for baking and the artistry, because I was just doing just some random cakes, things that weren't actually feeding my soul. And what is it all worth if you're not feeding your soul with your own art? So I do get what you're saying around.
You're so right. Yeah. We've all been there, I think.
Yeah, definitely have to feed your soul. And I do notice that your cookies are really feeding your soul, especially like I hear it in your narrations. I really live for your voiceovers, Maddie.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I really live for those voiceovers, because sometimes they're hilarious and I'm like, here her go. But then I love how you show both sides of this cookie, this cookie world, where you tell people that you can do this and you're going to make mistakes, but here is how you can scrape it right off and start over. Is this does this translate to your teaching overall? Is this how you are in classes and stuff? Are you telling them the do's and don'ts and encouraging them that they can always start over? Yeah.
I just think it's so important, especially with social media being such a big part in kids' lives today, to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I've never loved that before videos, sometimes we were just seeing these pictures and it looked like everything was so perfect. And I've always felt it was important to be authentic and say, I, screwed up this cookie, or I don't know what design I'm going to do today. Or, like I didn't really enjoy making this design. I just want people to know that that's okay to be human. We're not little robots creating cookies. And yeah, that has to apply in so many other ways of life. Same with, teaching writing. Just, it's okay to screw up. We're going to learn from that, or we're going to fix it this way. And to act like we're all able to get it right the first time is so ridiculous. That's so unrealistic. And so I think that's always just like being genuine and being authentic and being myself and making sure that that comes first in my art is just so important.
Yeah.
And that's how, that's how I want my kids to be.
Yeah, that's good. So it's like when I watch your like your mini tutorials online, I think, man, she's a great teacher, right? And a lot of people often think that we all have, we all have to be great in, these official modalities that we've chosen, like you a teacher, me a vaccine scientist. But then here we are being self-taught artists. You are a self-taught cookier, Tell me, how do you use the University of YouTube as well?
Oh, yeah.
And tell me, where do you get your inspirations? Who helps to guide you? Who inspires Maddie to be this good?
Well, when I first started, there was a couple people, Sweet Ams. I don't know if you know her, but she was kind of the big cookie artist that posted on YouTube, and Shell Sweets. She's another one. So those are my first two that taught me a lot just from watching and learning them. Now I get so inspired by my friends that are in this industry, seeing what they're doing, and not necessarily inspired artistic wise, but just inspired to keep going and to just be like, oh, wow, they made that really cool thing, like I should try that, and it's because we're supportive of each other and we, talk to each other every day, and it's not a competition between women. Instead of using that to be, I'm going to try to be better than her at this. It's more like, oh my gosh, that's so great that you did that. I want to try too. And it's like this really cool community. So I think I'm really, really inspired by the women that are in this community with me that are lifting each other up. And I think that is another key to the burnout, to staying in this and continuing to look at it as an artistic passion, having other people that are in it with you and can inspire you that way.
Yeah. So Minnesota is really lucky, or I say blessed enough to have like other great cookiers, right? We have Cake Smith, Bacon, Mini Cookies. Tell me about the importance of that fellowship with other cookiers. You mentioned the, having a collective and conversations with them and cheering each other on. But tell me, what does it do for Maddie, the individual, and, the cookie business, Garty Goodies?
I think this is a naturally isolating business. I think it's common that it's women who are stay-at-home moms or have left a first career and they're just at home doing this. Very few of us actually are in a commercial kitchen of some sort around people. We're by ourselves. And then you're making the cookies by yourself. You're making the videos and posting or whatever by yourself. It can be incredibly isolating, and you can get that tunnel vision if you don't have other people. And we all learned that during COVID, right? Yeah. And so it applies everywhere. If you try to go into this and just be me, myself, and I, it's probably not going to last that long for you because you need that connection with other people. I need days where I can say to Minnie's Cookies and Cake Smith, like, oh my gosh, I'm so uninspired. This customer gave me this theme and I have no idea. And then she'll say, oh, why don't you do this? And then another will say, oh, or you could do this. And then all of a sudden we have all these ideas, and it's like I wouldn't have been able to do that without them. So it's just so important to have other people in the same industry as you lifting you up,
Yeah. Community, having a community overall is really good for people. And it's always important to find your own community, find a community that supports and lifts you up. I want to kind of talk about how you go from inspiration to execution. I love that it's a good segue anyway, because you just talked about like having a mind block, for a certain theme, and you can talk to your community, and they help to get you out of this space. Tell me what is your process from going from inspiration to execution of your cookies?
Oh man, I wish it was more streamlined. It's probably a little more chaotic than
Is it?
I think. So many times I'll just have a color palette, and I'll just start with, oh, I really want to use these colors in my next set. I'll sketch out designs a lot of times. I usually pick out the cookie cutter shapes and then sketch them out old school style on a sheet of paper, usually while my daughter is painting or coloring or something. And it's funny, it's like these sometimes ideas will pop into my head throughout the day, and I'll have to quick, sketch out like, oh, I could do this. Even when I'm like shopping at TJ Maxx and I see a really cute greeting card and I'm like, oh, that would make such a perfect cookie, and I have to put it in my phone. And so it starts kind of that way of just kind of this conglomeration of all of these little ideas and then sketching them out. And then at some point I just have to stop coming up with ideas and just start. And that can be hard too, because you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I need another one. And at some point I just have to start creating the cookies. I don't love to send my customers sketches ahead of time, only because it can kill the creative process for me. When it's a bigger order, like a wedding or something where, they really want to know what the cookies are going to look like, I totally will. But when it's something smaller, so often I'll think, oh, I was going to make this yellow circle cookie. But then when I'm actually decorating, I realize, oh, it would look so much better if it was orange, And so I like to have that flexibility to be able to change, or, oh, actually I'm going to add a bunch of flowers on this cookie. And so that's why I typically don't love sending designs, because I'd say most of my creativity comes in the actual process and not ahead of time.
So how do you explain to the customer then, the concept? So do you give them a concept of what you're going to do? Okay.
Typically my customers will say, we're going to have a retro hippie themed first birthday. And I'll ask usually for a color palette. Some, some have one. I'll ask for their invitation. And then I'll ask if they have any designs that inspire them. I don't love, I always tell people I won't copy a design that another cookie artist made. It's going to have my own spin on it, but I still encourage people to send them, because I want them to get what they want. I don't want it to be all about me, because I'm running a business. I have to make sure the customer is pleased with their product. I think a lot of my customers at this point know that the more creative freedom and flexibility they give me, the better the product is, as long as I'm staying in those color palettes and invitation. So yeah, they'll give me that. And then I will send them my ideas in their invoice. I'll say, there'll be star cookies and flowers, and sometimes I'll add one that wasn't on the invoice. And I always ask them, what are the must-haves? Just to make sure I don't miss that. If they really want a name plaque in there, or if they don't want to have their name on there, I always make sure that I ask them that, just so that they're not totally caught off guard or surprised or upset by their order, which hasn't happened.
So for you, how is it, I know that you do cookie classes as well, right? How seamless is it actually to move from your love of teaching in high school to actually teaching these cookie classes? How do you
really seamless. I feel I've over prepared, and sometimes I think I do too much for my cookie classes. People are getting handouts and they're getting links and they're getting worksheets and probably more than they need to get, but it's it's just ingrained in me to do that. And I'm not only going to teach them, but I'm going to make sure they have a visual aid and that they can work at their own pace if they're a fast worker or slow. So much of that training that I've had of diversifying my classroom and diversifying my instruction has just gone right into my cookie classes. So that it's been really seamless, but like I said, sometimes I think maybe I do too much.
So in the classroom, is this how you teach generally, giving them an abundance of information as well? So you find like it's translated into the classroom.
I always tell people at the beginning, this isn't the type of class where you're just doing it for like this one-off event, at a brewery where you make something and you go home and you never think about it again. I always tell them, I want you to be able to leave my class and do this at home. And at Christmas time, impress all your friends. And at your birthday, my goal is that you're not just getting the class, but you are getting an experience that you can take into other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I as a teacher, well, I've taught when I was in college, right? And I was in graduate school, I had to teach. I got this I feel this sense of pride and purpose when I see my students doing well. Talk to me about after, having taught a class and then watching one of your students do well in the space.
Oh yeah. It's really cool to see people open their own cookie businesses that have taken one of my classes. It's funny because I'll always get people that say, are you scared you're going to lose business if you start these classes? And I'm like, no, I love seeing there's not enough cookiers to fulfill all of the requests. I can't tell you how many times I have to tell someone I can't take their order because I'm booked. So to have somebody else in the industry that learned what they know from me is pretty awesome to say, but I could confidently recommend this other person. That's really fun. And it's really fun just to see the hobby baker, that did it one time with their mom as a fun little outing. And then they send me a picture of like, look what we did for Christmas. It's like you said, it's such a sense of pride, and it's a different sense of pride because I never really get to see that with my students when I was a high school teacher, because you teach them and then they leave and you don't really hear from them again. You don't know what they've gone on to do in this way. It's a very concrete way of being like, wow, I showed them how to do that. Yeah. And that's really cool.
So you did mention briefly that, you are busy. And, you take such pride in handing off or recommending someone that you've actually taught. Is Maddie actually, what's keeping her the most busy? The orders, or we know that you're a content creator, right? With almost 1 million followers. Like, which keeps you the most busy?
That's such a great question. Oh, man, it's such a balance between the two. I'd say content creation does when I want it to, if that makes sense. Okay. So when I say, I really want to get some good engagement this month, I'm going to post every day. I usually set goals for myself. I'm going to post every day because I also work with brands and get some big partnerships that can really help pay the bills. Then that is my number one priority. And that is what keeps me the busiest. But that can be really straining on mental health. And then I'll just go away for a week or two and not post at all and don't care what happens with the numbers, because I need to just be, focusing on being a mom or focusing on my cookie orders or whatever it is. But I'd say for the most part, it is the content creation that keeps me the most busy.
Yeah. So what is it like? Tell me. I'm not an influencer, brand ambassador or anything. I just want to know, what is it like being a content creator, influencer in this space? What is it like for you?
It's wild. It's like the wild, wild west in a way that there aren't these rules that we're used to. You never know what the brand is going to want you to do or what they're going to be willing to pay you or what you should be asking, and charging. And so much of it is like a learning as you go. And then creating a community of other influencers so I can talk to them and be like, because it's like I need my whole other community for that of,
right.
What should I do here? So it's really wild, but it's super fun. I mean, it's just, it's a blast. And I keep everyone keeps asking me, like, what are you going to do in the future? And I'm like, I'm going to keep riding this wave until it dies down, because we don't know what social media is going to look like in a year. It's already changed so much, the influencer world. So I just take them as they come.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good. So, like I mentioned before, I have Cake Therapy, which is the Cake Therapy Foundation for girls. It is a space that I want to use to inspire like women and girls who've been impacted by systems on a whole, right? To tell them that they too can become regardless of traumas or whatever it is that they've experienced in their lifetime. And I'm trying to promote not just talk therapy, that there are other forms of therapy that that an individual can use to really ground them and center them. My question to you is, what would you say to a young boy or girl or gender nonconforming youth or individual? What would you say to that individual who is listening to Maddie right now, who wants to become a cookier? What's your advice to them? Also, what would be your advice to them if they also want to become an influencer?
So to become a cookier, I would say to just start creating. There are so many resources that are free. Like you said, the University of YouTube. Start learning as much as you can. What's nice is, like, for the most part, the art supplies are pretty affordable. So as much as you can, bake and practice and start creating, and let go of it needing to look perfect, understanding that there's going to be a learning curve, and to keep doing it. Give cookies away to your friends, bring the cookies to the next birthday party or the cake, because that's when people are really going to start to show you how much they admire what you do. And that can be just such a proud moment, and it can be so empowering to know that you can do that on your own. And so I really encourage and to have faith that what you're learning is still, as you grow, even if you're not at that, Food Network level, what you're doing is more than a lot of other people can do. So many people are going to have value in that. And whether that's cakes or art or writing, whatever that passion is, you got to practice it and let go of any of the restraints. And then as far as getting into social media influencing, I know that's where everybody wants to tap into. I'd say to go at it from an authentic place. If you're getting into it because you want to make a bunch of money from Dior and Chanel or whatever, but you don't really have a personal brand, it's probably not going to work out for you. So start with being authentic. Start with being yourself and not looking at what anybody else is doing. That was really key for me in posting my cookie videos. Is when I started posting them, I added the voiceover. And at the time, no one was really doing that. It was just a nice, pleasant music. But I wanted to talk. I wanted to explain things to people. And I think that's what's helped me be successful, is I'm just being honest, just being myself. So I think that's where you have to start, and then grow from there.
So Maddie has a family. She has children. Complete this sentence for me. When you're speaking to your kids, you say, when you grow up, you can.
When you grow up, I mean, you can be what you want to be.
Yeah.
That's what I always grew up with. You can be anything you want to be.
Is the message different for the boy than from the girl?
No, it's definitely the same. Absolutely the same. Well, okay, I should say that. I want to make sure that my daughter knows that she truly can be anything that she wants to be, and it's different than what it was years ago and what people are going to tell you. And so I'll say in that way, it's different, that I want to make sure that I'm fostering all the little talents that I start seeing from her, and not pushing them aside because they're not traditionally feminine, or, she needs to be a mom or whatever that is. And so I think that would be the main difference.
To the girl or the youth that's listening to you, when you grow up, you can be. What's your message to them?
When you grow up, well, you don't even have to wait till you grow up. When you grow up, you can be successful. You can, obviously, the age old, work hard or whatever, but you can be successful and you can find happiness. You have to look at what is the defining of your success. You know, is it having a nice family? Is it being able to have a creative outlet? Is it being able to feel fulfilled? You know, you can. And I want people to know that, especially when you're young and things feel so intense and hard, you can get out of that. You can get out of that time, and you can grow from it, and you can be successful and happy.
Yeah. Does Maddie have a guiding philosophy? And if she does, what is it?
I mean, I probably said it too many times, but it's just being authentic, being true to yourself, being true to yourself. And it sounds so cliche and so cheesy, but if I look at all of the times that I was not true to myself, those were the times that were the hardest for me. Those were the times that, you know, I took an order that didn't make sense, or I committed to something that didn't make sense for me, or who I was, or wasn't something I believed in. And so at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, is being true to yourself.
Absolutely. And in 10 years, 15 years down the line, what are you hoping that your legacy will be?
Well, I'd love to write a book someday. So
Do it.
Amazing that you've done that. So I'd love to leave that as a legacy. But honestly, this is going to sound really cheesy, but I want to make sure that my kids saw me as a good mom, and that they look back at their childhood and feel like it was a happy childhood. And so at the end of the day, even though I know this is an interview about my cookie business, if I'm really thinking about what I want my legacy to be, it's I want it to be my kids and how I raised them and made them into good humans.
Yeah, absolutely. We owe them that, right? It's a
Yes.
commitment to them that we take when we bring them into this world. So absolutely.
Yes.
I want to know what's in the works for you then. You know, what's next for you?
Well, I'd love to write a book.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll chat about that later. But
Have you started?
No.
Oh.
I don't know what it's going to be about. I mean, I have wanted to write a book ever since I was a kid. So
Yeah.
we know when I was a kid, I wanted to write young adult fiction, and now it would probably be something else. But so I'd love to do that. And it, you know, I've often thought just sharing my journey, like as you have done with yours, might be something that would be worth writing down. So that's always kind of in the back of my head when my daughter is also in school, is having the time to possibly pursue that.
So you are not quite sure where your books, what your book's gonna be about, what you do have stories to tell. And well, I look forward to reading your stories and continue, you know, watching and learning from you, because girl, my cookies suck.
Well, my cakes are not on your level, so you know, we all have our strengths.
I look at your feet and I'm like, girl, what you over there doing? Do I need to come over to St. Paul to do some of this stuff? You are like too good. You guys are too good. I love watching you, Kate Smith Baking, Mini Cookies, and a few others in the cities. I like, share with our listeners, Maddie, like, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Garty Goodies. And that's where I try to post probably 3 or 4 times a week. You can see me in my stories, sometimes talking about daily ins and outs of my life. You can come to one of my cookie classes. I partner with Bachmann's in Minneapolis to teach there. And I also teach at a lot of different places, you know, jewelry shops, and usually in the Twin Cities, the metro area of Minnesota. So yeah, those are the main. And then you can always order cookies from me from my website at gartygoodies.com too.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Maddie, for you know, saying yes to the invitation to join me as I'm embarking on this journey to spread not only just love and light and art, just the therapeutic, you know, aspect of any art form. So I'm really excited that you decided to come on board, and plus we're neighbors. So I love that, you know, you decided to to support your neighborhood girl on this new venture. So thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us on today's podcast, Your Slice of Joy and Healing was with Maddie Gartmann from Garty Goodies, the Cake Therapy Podcast. Enjoyed having you today, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cake Therapy Podcast. Your support means the world to us. Let us know what you thought about today's episode in the comment section. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you found the conversation helpful, please share it with a friend. Also, follow Sugar Spoon Desserts on all social media platforms. We invite you to support Cake Therapy and the work we do with our foundation by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description or by visiting the Cake Therapy website and making a donation. All your support will go towards the Cake Therapy Foundation and the work we are doing to help women and girls. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.